this. I'm grateful for one other thing. By the time they were my age, my parents and my grandparents had lost everything they had. Their country, their home, their property. They'd been forced to start again in a foreign land and a foreign language. We live here in peace, and we don't stay up at night fearing we will be woken by a knock on the door. We don't fear our children will be sent to fight in a faraway war. We don't fear arrest or exile. So here's to the Sunrise Cafe in North Harrow and the Tube Station and Brent Cross Shopping Centre and the local dry cleaners. Here's to all of us who love this country and its small ideas and don't want it swept away in a fit of popular enthusiasm or revolutionary zeal. Here's to the places that took in my family and yours. Here's to the suburbs and all of you who live in them. I don't think if I was having this birthday party now that I'd make the same speech. It's not that I believe that we're on the verge of social collapse, but the last decade, uncomfortable as it is to admit, has dented my confidence. There are too many places in the world where such a collapse has already happened, and too many people who've been its victims. Something about the confidence I showed that night seems to me like smugness now. The idea that the value of liberal democracy and law and liberty and tolerance is a lesson that has been learned and can't be unlearned seems hopelessly over-optimistic. What happened to my parents isn't about to happen to me. It isn't about to happen to my children. But could it? It could. Absolutely it could. So I think it's time that I told the story of my mother and father and their parents, to describe what happened to them and why. It's a story I'm only just beginning to understand as an adult, because when you're young, you don't ask too many questions about your parents or the life you're living. They just are. I was brought up with my brother and sister in Hendon, a suburb of London about a 45-minute train ride from the centre. During my childhood, before going to Hendon Central Underground Station and taking the Northern Line to City University every morning, Dad would drop in on his mother Lucia, who lived round the corner. After Dad went to work, my grandmother would then set off to shop at the local express dairy and the butcher's, dressed immaculately in white gloves, a beautiful cloth coat, and a smart hat. The incongruity was to us a source of amusement, but also a little pride. She was known by every shopkeeper as the Lady of Hendon Central. Since they had first acquired a permanent home on the Hendon Way in the late 1940s, neither Dad nor Lucia had moved more than 300 metres from it, or from each other. We all, my mother and my siblings, accepted this close relationship and this aversion to moving for what it was, without spending undue time pondering its origin. Dad's close relationship had become my mum's, and then ours. My father was a gentle and kind man, intensely intellectual, master of 9 languages, and with a knowledge so broad that when he died, one of his grandchildren commented that, now we will have to use Google. Yet he also had a formality that didn't quite fit. He would do up his tie to answer the phone. He would do up his tie to go to the beach, and he had almost no knowledge of popular culture. There was a hole where his teenage years should have been. I think this setup, my cerebral father, his mother, the Lady of Hendon Central living round the corner, the absence of a wider family living nearby, might indeed have been quite an odd one if it hadn't been for my mother. For although my father wasn't insular, it was my mother, I think, who was most responsible for anchoring our family in modern Britain, seeing ourselves as part of something new, rather than as the last stranded remnant of a dying continental Jewish culture. She was determined that she and my father would be more than just a survivor of all that had happened to them. Why were my parents like this? What explains them? Where did they come from? And what happened to them to make them like they are? The centre of our family life was the Friday evening meal in my parents' dining room. Even as adults with children of our own, we very rarely missed it, and while Lucia was alive, she was always there too. My father would work his way round the table blessing his children and grandchildren, before we cut the plaited loaves of challah, and then would come inevitably my mother's chicken soup with matzo balls,